So there's this idea that humanity is working on the same problem, that we are stuck under the same plight, right? That we have forgiven ourselves, given ourselves leave from our sins, from our shortcomings, and that we have arrived at this state where now God is dead. That's just accepted, right? Because it was stated by certain philosophers who were really saying, especially Friedrich Nietzsche, that you killed God in your minds and your souls, and now what are you going to contend with? In other words, the simple directive, right? And I got into this in a prior video where I'm talking about what if you're moving? What if you're walking, right? The fact is that when you get into karma, not everybody is pulling the same load. You may posit the same inquiries, the same questions, but that universal affliction is placed on you at a lesser or greater or really a very authentic to yourself deposit or disposition of fractions that are just as unique. The karma is just as unique as you are. So this championing or carrying a torch for humanity is a complete lie, okay? And that is living a lie. That you have all these people who are supposedly umbrellas for one another in academia, right? But in that, there's this competition, this fierce competition with one another. And there isn't this good old jolly boy, gentlemanly way of doing things when real loss and real gain is ever present, right? So that's the time we're in right now, where these people are thinking the least, the worst, or the margin of what your everyday proletariat or plebeian, if you will, what they're thinking about. Your assumed, 105 to 115 IQers out there that are thinking about these conditional states, right? As compared to these people who think they are Ivy League level thinkers. They're 145 IQ and up, right? And they're thinking about things that your average everyday person isn't thinking about. And what we find is, as that information's out here, that these higher level thinkers are coming up with ever more ridiculous postulates and ideas, right? That because in the action of movement, in the action of employment, we see how the physics are working every single day, how all the falsities are very obvious and relevant to your average everyday person who has to struggle and make it through, and that they're dealing with these types of things like an athlete is dealing with the same properties and experiencing the same properties, but in real time. They're moving with it, right? They're not just sitting in some sedentary notional, nominal aspect of discounting certain ideas or ideologies and upholding others. They're in the actionable state of movement and movement patterns, right? And they're confined or experiencing the limitations that other people, from an esoteric sense, are also more apt to go into things that might be ritualistic and even bordering on metaphysics, on into the, well, it's always metaphysics, right? It's really about the conditional state that we're in always, from a truer sense, but into a more ontological sense, staying away from, the obvious network grind of eschatology, as to say that we don't have to get sucked into that hole necessarily, but it's always looming, that we always have our own personal black holes, we have our own personal salvation, and to try and come up with something, a billable theory that seems to work for everybody. We're not all in the same state, nor are we carrying the same karma. If you want to look at things under, right, karma, dharma, under those aspects. You had people that were walking and learning and moving with these concepts and these ideas as they were going through a day to earn their daily keep. Whereas you have these people nowadays, and for the long, who are being granted or given full scholarships to Ivy League colleges based on their performance that was heavily influenced by downloaded information that wasn't something that they had to actually challenge themselves and come up with. So you find later in life, when they're no longer able to keep the breath and the tempo in sync with this, that it seems as if they lost everything that seemed to be great and glorified in their youth. They can no longer keep up with the conceptualization and actually, like in the case of Jack Sarfati, even speak, right? And you know, you could go on and name many other people who just don't seem to be living in this reality because they don't have to, right? Because they don't have to work. They never really did, right? And so not until you live in the way of the common man are you going to be able to espouse or come up with, instead of, you know, running some sort of self altruistic hegemony where you are the master of your realm, right? You have to have lived in the shoes of the people that you think that you are, you have conquested and overthrown merely within your own echo chamber of your own intellect, that is misleading you because you are being misled more than anyone else, because these physics postulations don't actually permeate into the outside world. It's the same physics and the same power of influence that is allowing you, you know, Jack Sarfati and all you other, you know, Lee Smolin and everyone else to be able to drink your milk, drink your coffee, right? And that there is the practicum of everyday life and the body through thermodynamic properties that you are supporting that are allowing you to live within the fart mechanism of your own chamber,